There we are.
Da 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 da. I'm gonna have to really make sure I double check and triple check next time. Make sure what day you've sent the message. This is the third time the universe is trying to keep us
But
apart.
but we always manage to get together, so there you are. Despite
Absolutely.
everything.
Yes. How are you?
Rock and roll, absolutely wonderful. What about you?
Yeah, no, good, because the sun just makes all the difference, doesn't it? And I know we have a topic of conversation today, so I don't want to go on about anything too much, but
Hmm.
fine. I did watch this interview the other day with this guy. I should remember his name. What was it? Brooke Awers or Agers or something. He knows a lot about a lot because he was partly like developed harp, and he was explaining how it kind of how it works, and so I fitted in his bits and my bits. And I know how it all works now, buggers. So the thing is, and one thing I want to say, when they do this what I call the suicide grey dome of doom, corner to corner, horizon to horizon, blanket of grey, it's not the grey and the dark and the fact that there's no light that bothers me or people like me that feel it. They're actually bouncing frequencies off it, can direct them at people. That's how they do it. And because it is, and the reason it's so dark and the car lights come on is it's just because it's reflecting all the light back. Proper cloud, 90% of the light gets through. So even when you have a cloud, in the old days, right, when we were little kids running around, it wouldn't get cold. But these days, once one of them clouds appears and hovers and moves and just stays as long as it can, the temperature drops extreme, and a lot of people go, oh God, it doesn't get cold when the sun goes, and it's because all the light, everything's being reflected back because of the particulate matter. So that's why they're putting it all in, and plus it's to shield the vampires, isn't it, from the light. It's protection as well for certain ones. So
Yeah.
anyway, me and my obsession with the sky and the light. So yeah, we're getting to it now, aren't we, Gordon? It's all coming out, with Gary Waterman
Yeah,
and
yeah.
all the stuff that he's uncovering and how many people are involved. And it's insane. And it's like maybe 1 in 3 people now has got a story of abuse in some way. And even now, I was just watching David Wilcock now.
Oh yeah.
He's a bit of a character. But the thing is, he did get me through the lockdown when he appeared. I found his 2 hour, 3 hour thing, the presentation is quite, helpful. So I do like him. But he's now talking about how he suspects he or knows he was taken into the underground Disney and, experimented on and stuff because they can manipulate time, can't they, in certain places that they take you. So they can take you from a bathroom and then put you back again in Disneyland, and you can experience all this stuff, and it's not real in the 3D. There'd be no evidence, there'd be no, do you know, so it's kind of crazy how many of us have actually also got implanted memories from abductions and stuff. It's so crazy and out there. But anyway,
Mm.
I want to hear your story.
About being a Jehovah's Witness.
Mm.
Where do I start? um, I was a Jehovah's Witness for probably officially 17 years, 16 years. Then I was kind of on the outskirts until I was 20. And then when I was 20, 21, I was expulsed from the witnesses, called disfellowshipped. So that was kind of my time. But, knowing that the first 7 years of our life are absolutely incredible, whatever happens in the first seven marks us for the rest of our life. So I had 7 years of deep cult indoctrination, and it affected me so deeply that it made me do things when I left that were bizarre. I lived a bizarre life purely because of the indoctrination. I remember my first memories of being a Jehovah's Witness were deep regret, like embarrassment, regret. I was embarrassed about being a Jehovah's Witness. I didn't want to be a Jehovah's Witness. The lifestyle, I don't know if you know much about the basic the time that witnesses spend being a witness is
I don't know much about it
it's
at all.
full
Except
time. It's a full time thing.
I met. Yeah. Go.
So for example, this would be my week, and this is some, think about a 6-year-old child. That's when my memories kind of started. 6-year-old child. On a Monday night, we would practice, we would read the book that we were going to do on the Tuesday night. So we would have an hour on the Monday night after school reading the most boring thing you could possibly imagine. Then on the Tuesday, we would have the live meeting where we would go to somebody's house and we'd meet up another hour, hour and a half. Then on the Thursday, we'd have a 2-hour in the Kingdom Hall. And then on the Saturday, we'd go out knocking on people's doors, which was hell for me. It was purgatory.
I was going to say, I mean, were you just totally embarrassed?
It was dreadful. It was dreadful. And I was a shy child. I was very shy when I was a child. So the idea of knocking on people's doors, and the thing is, what we did as children, we didn't talk about the Bible and stuff. We just sold the 2 magazines, Watchtower and Awake. That was our job. And what was bizarre was I so hated it. All I did was I just learned by, I mean, it's a bit like, I suppose in many respects, it's trauma so great that you disassociate from it. So what I did was I just learned the script, which was, hello, my friend and I, right? Because you always went in pairs. The problem was, if ever I had to go on my own, I would still say my friend and I, because it was my script. And people would be looking like this. Hello, my friend and I.
Oh.
Now, my friend and I are calling around with these 2 magazines, the Watchtower and the Awake. The Watchtower is a Bible magazine and the Awake is a topical magazine. And we're offering these for 20 pence for the 2. Would you like them? So that was it. And even now, I mean, we're talking about 55 fucking years later, and I still know my script. The problem was when they put the prices up, 20 pence for the 2. When they put the prices up, I couldn't change. My script was 2. So I used to sell them for 20 pence. They were 25, then they were 30. And it just 20 pence used to come out. So it was a horrific upbringing, filled with people who told you that they loved you. Add to that there's a scripture in the Bible, which you probably know, spare the rod and spoil the child. So the witnesses were very pro discipline. And my father was pro. Do you know what I mean? He took discipline and he made it into an art form. So we would be corporally punished after every meeting because we were only little and we couldn't, to sit for 2 hours during the most fucking boring stuff you could ever imagine. A little child of 6, what are you going to do? What they're going to do? They're not going to sit for 2 hours. So we misbehaved every meeting, and we had a like really quite significant punishment afterwards. Physical, very physical. So it was kind of like I had this hated my life, hated being a Jehovah's Witness, terrified of my father, and being indoctrinated. So it was like MK Ultra. It's an MK Ultra style of upbringing. Very, very.
It's all the same.
It's the same process.
It's all the same. I mean, it's all, you've got all different branches, but it's all coming from the same head of the hydra. It's just a different name and a different brand, isn't it?
Well, when you look at the beginnings, of the Jehovah's Witness organization, there was the fella who started it was a 33-degree Mason called Charles Taze Russell, and he was financed, would you believe, by one of the big R families. I think it was the Rothschilds that financed his start. And this is what I believe. Having now experienced it and knowing what I know now, these cult religions were set up as a testing ground to see what humankind was capable of doing, how much they could be programmed. So what I've seen, Kerry, is that the programming that was used and still is with the Jehovah's Witnesses was then just taken and put into society. And so they're using exactly the same principle. Society is a cult, right? Everything's a cult, but society's a cult. And so they use exactly the same things. I mean, years ago, can you remember when we had this trust the science? Don't question the science. Who are you? Are you a scientist? How
Mm.
do you question it? Shut up and believe it. Yeah. In 1990, in the magazines, they were saying that already. We have become aware of people who are questioning the doctrine. And what we say is you shouldn't question. Don't question. We want you to trust. So they were trying out all of these things. The shunning that people did during the pandemic of, have you had this? You haven't? Well, you can't come. I don't want to spend any time with you. They already tested it out, and the witnesses did it beautifully. Family members, no problem. We're going to shun them because we love them.
Yeah.
So the use it as a testing, like a stamping ground, a testing ground for what they could do. And then I saw it come into society, and it was like society was the cult. And then I left that cult and I entered a new cult, the cult of the truther movement. And I thought, how many? And what I realized is everything's a cult. We are culty people. We like cults. We like being involved in something because I talk about this in a video. I don't know whether I've released it or not, but we are group herd people. We like that. It's important for us to be part of something. And the baddies know it, and they manipulate that. They manipulate our herd instinct to make us do things that we would never do, never ever do if we had some good people to lead us, It's a
Yeah, I think you did release it, I think.
okay, yeah. So yeah, I did.
Right. So at the beginning, as I was focusing in, because there's so much there that you've just said.
Yes, I've thrown a lot in there.
Yeah, you said you were born into it, right? And then you left when you were
When I was 21, I was
right,
thrown
21.
out.
Yeah, that's what I said.
I was
And then you
thrown out.
went straight from, and how old are you now?
I'll be 60 this year.
No, no. Have you got a filter on your thing?
This is
Oh my God.
Zoom's
Not
always
even,
really kind.
look, not even the way you look, just your energy. I mean, I know what you look like because I can feel your energy. So that's amazing. Oh my God, that's shocking. But I mean, in a good way.
In a good way,
Right. So
I'm pleased.
you went straight from, so when you were 21, you then, obviously you'd seen things, you were awake because of obviously how discordant and wrong everything was, right? So when you left, you went looking for the truth then? Or did you just live your life and you only kind of started delving into stuff later?
Well, it was an interesting process. A good question, Kerry. When I left, you understand what happens with like all fundamentalist religions and this kind of thing. There's only one true religion for them. So I didn't leave because I didn't believe it. I left actually, I mean, really, hats off to me. I left because I knew that I could not maintain the standards. I knew that I was living a hypocritical life because I couldn't follow the rules, nor could anybody else, by the way. But I at least thought, I can't do this. I can't do it. But I still believed it. I believed it and I left. And I knew as a fact inside that I only had 5 years left to live and then I was going to die. Okay. Why? Because the witnesses since 1900 or before that have said the end's coming, the end's coming, the end's coming. Okay. But it was always this rolling 5 years time, 5 years time. So, and what they do is they use the state of the world as their measure. So wars, reports of wars, famine, pestilence. Okay. So there's always a reason that they can say it's here. It's coming. Because that's what we've had in the last 100 years is famine, pestilence, wars, all of that. So I left thinking, I've got to make the most of this. I've only got 5 years. And so I went into a headlong downwards, not a downward spiral, like a sideways spiral of, let's be honest, 3 words: sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That's what I did. I went wild, absolutely wild. And I had loads of fun. I had loads of fun. I felt free and everything. But always at the same time, I had this belief in God. And so I started to look at other religions. And I thought, maybe I can find this belief. Maybe I can find it in other religions. I remember studying Buddhism. I remember Hare Krishna, looking at that. But it was always, every time I looked at it, it was the same shit. Different face, same shit. And I thought, this is the same. I want something fresh and whatever, you know? After 5 years, I was at peak party mode, and I kept thinking, I'm still alive. I mean, it was a testament to me that I was still alive, because I shouldn't have been. But
Pain in it.
I was canning it. I was canning it. And so it was during my 20s, as I got a little bit older, I kept reflecting, thinking, I'm still alive. The end's not here. The end hasn't come. And it was by the time I got to 30, I thought, right, this has got to stop. I've got to change my life. I've got to do something different. But it was only at 30 that I started to start thinking about the beliefs that had been installed in me, this MK Ultra, this trauma that had been installed. And so it was in that period of time that I started to become a therapist. I trained in it. And as I was training, I was doing the work on myself, because that's what you do. You know, you're training and you try techniques out. And I started to heal myself of the trauma. And it took me all of my 30s to overcome 20 years. And in the, you know, so it took me, basically it took me 20 years to get over 20 years of programming. It took me that. And I know, and then I started working with ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and what I discovered was that I was lucky. I was a lucky one, because most ex-Jehovah's Witnesses never get over it. And they are trapped inside of that horrible world. And the only way they can get out is by having therapy. They must have therapy. You can't do it yourself, I believe. I mean, you might, if you're really good, you might be able to do it, but normally, no, you need help, because the programming is, and I'm sure you can relate to this, the programming is in your genes, it's in your genetic material. They've installed it. It's in your psyche, and you need help to get it out.
Yeah, I think what they do is they know our psyche so well, so they know the things that they can do. And even when you're in these situations, and what you said at the beginning as well about how they tell you that they love you. Like, so my dad was never around. He had another family, and he used to come and visit us, right? Obviously, when he felt like he needed whatever he needed. And so the evidence in front of me was that my dad didn't love me, because if he did, he'd be with us, or he'd at least explain what was probably going on. Everything was just always, you know, I mean, I believe that they were married, but I don't know what excuses she gave. We believe everything, don't we? Because we just want to know. We want to think that it's actually okay. We don't want to admit the truth as a child, because that's not safe. But she'd always say, oh, you know, he loves you so much, and he breaks his heart that he can't be with us, and you know. But the evidence, when he wasn't here to see us, he'd either just be with my mum, or we'd be sitting on the step, you know, locked out, looking for a 50p piece that's thrown in the garden. And then he'd storm off down the path without even looking around. So, and then you're told, no, he does love you. And so you're being told lies that you're having to accept as truth, and your truth is being completely turned on its head. And that, when it's done to you, like you said, up 0 to 7, it's part of your programming. And even when you know you're listening to it just messes you up,
Sure.
because you doubt everything. You doubt yourself. It's just awful. So well, I mean, what's the core of their teaching? I mean, apart from the fact that they're clearly using the same tactics as the cabal to kind of like dangle the carrot of doom in front of everyone to keep everybody running, and you know, like, but what's their main?
Okay, so the core beliefs are that they are God's chosen people, that they're the only ones that when Armageddon comes, they're the only ones who will be saved. Everybody else will die. Everybody else will die. So the kind of, if you put it in, imagine because the work with people's egos, imagine what that does to the ego. I am one of God's chosen people, and I, among with my brothers and sisters, are the only ones who are going to survive this great tribulation. It doesn't put you in a good place. It doesn't. So their job is to go, therefore, and make disciples of the people. Okay, so their job is, the idea is this: they have to do the preaching work. When the preaching work is completed, when everybody has had the message and everybody said yes or no, then the end will come. Okay, so that's why the preach, because let's get this fucking thing finished with. Yeah, let's get everybody told so that the end can come. And so the idea is then when the end comes, the world will be converted into a paradise. They'll live in the paradise with the lions and the bears and the tigers, oh my, and everything will be peaceful. Okay, so that's their idea. Only them. However, everybody, and it used to work before, but it's getting a bit dodgy. Everybody who has died will be resurrected. And so they'll be brought back to earth. Now, I don't know whether they've changed the doctrine on that, because it's getting a bit, I mean, there's an awful lot of people died. It's going to be chocolate. Let's be honest. It'll be chocolate for them. But that's what they believe, everyone. And then they'll all come back. It's the people, it's us. We are the baddies, the sheep. The goats, we're the goats, they're the sheep. Yeah. So that's their belief. The other thing is that they believe 144,000 will rule from heaven. Earthbound beings who go up to heaven. They're going to be called the remnant. Well, the remnant, the ones who rule from heaven with God. And that's it.
It sounds very similar to a lot of things I've heard on Telegram from various people about being the remnants and the 144,000 and it's kind of a bit so right. What's the difference then between, you might not know this, Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons? I mean, I know there is obviously a difference, but it seems also like there's a lot of similarities with all these things as well.
There is. The Mormons have their book, the Mormon book, was created through screeing. Have you heard of screeing? Did you cut that?
Sorry, you just froze up then.
Right.
No, I all froze up.
The Mormon.
Hold on, my internet connection is not stable.
Okay.
So I'm moving.
You're going to move to...
I'm just going to reconnect it, then I'm going to move back. Okay. Do forgive me.
That's
my lack of professionalism. Whatever.
I like your house.
There's a lot of light. Sorry?
I like your house. It looks lovely.
I know, but look at this, where I was sitting just earlier. There's a car park there.
Oh, you've gone too far. You've gone too far away from the room.
Oh, have I got no internet again?
Yeah, you could.
Ayo. As they say in Malaysia. Ayo. Right, hold on. And we'll get right. It's back. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, fine.
Right. So Mormons and JWs.
Okay. So I was telling you about the Mormons. The Mormon, the guy who started it off used to be one of those people that you would go around villages selling stuff and doing like magic. Those people that would bring the card up and they would do stuff. And what happened was he started to scree. Screeing is what he would do is he would sit and he would put his head in a hat with some stones in. And he received the Book of Mormon by screeing. Right? It's an old, like the witches used to do, like looking into things. So he had somebody who would help him, and he basically just dictated the Book of Mormon. But the Book of Mormon, the difference is with the Mormons, they're a bit more way out there. They're a bit more wild. And so they've got, they believe that their leaders live on planets, like they live on planets and stuff like that. It's a lot more, it's a bit more like woo-woo. The witnesses are very Bible-based, just Bible-based, whereas the Mormons are on the Book of Mormon. But the take, you're going to see the 144,000 mentioned all of the time because it's in the Bible. You see, what the witnesses have done is this. They've taken the Bible and they've taken the monopoly on the Bible. They think that they're the only people who have the ability to understand the Bible and that God is only in their religion. And so that's why they kind of, what I was taught in the witnesses and, the studying of the Bible has helped me tremendously, because what I do see is, yes, we are in the last days. That's mentioned in the Bible. Of course we are. All the signs are there. But the thing where they go wrong is they just think that they're the only ones who've got that truth. Well, of course they haven't. The truth is out there now.
So when you were going into all of the, lectures and meetings and sermons and everything, how many would there be? How many other kids were there? And did you kind of talk to the other kids? Did you have a chance to hang out with them? Did anyone else ever say, "Oh my God, this is crazy," or was it just you?
No. One of the things that the witnesses would never ever talk about, and they don't want to admit to, is that all of them, every single one, pardon me if you're a witness, but this is true, and look me in the eyes and say it's not. They're all hypocrites. Okay? And I was a hypocrite. What I mean by that is what they've done, and this is part of the MK Ultra training, which is you will never ever be able to aspire to follow and to meet the requirements. You will always fall short. So it's this idea that religion's always done is you were a sinner, you were bad, and the only salvation you've got is through the organization. They don't make a big deal about Jesus saving. It's the organization that's going to save you. And so what happened was my peers were all like me. We got up to all kinds of stuff. We were right. So this is the analogy I would use. If you get a balloon, blow up a party balloon, tie a knot in it, okay, and you hold it. What happens is, by the force of nature, that balloon takes a beautiful shape. It takes a natural shape. But if you squeeze it like this, push it hard, it becomes distorted. That's what Jehovah's Witnesses are. Instead of being allowed to express and be a human, they are distorted. And so every single one of them is weird. All of my mates were weird. We would do weird things. We were more extreme than normal children. We would do weird things. There was a group of us that would get together and we would sniff industrial chloroform, who my mate, Jehovah's Witness, stole from his office where he worked. And so we would all just sit around, sniff chloroform, knock ourselves out. And and it was, sexual activity. It was just rampant, and I talked to somebody who was somebody maybe 20 years younger than me, and he was telling me, Jehovah's Witness, ex-Jehovah's Witness, and he was telling me about the escapades and how all the young boys were sleeping with all the young girls in the congregation. It was just wild sex going on. In my congregation, we had a child molester who was found, caught, not reported to the police, and then allowed to come back to the Kingdom Hall, and then moved Kingdom Halls, and they didn't pass on the information. Right, so this is very, very standard. So because of, and it's the same you see with the priests and things like that weren't allowed to marry. What did they do? They became distorted. They became perverted, because that's not a natural state of being. And so all that happened was the witnesses have been distorted and perverted many of them have extreme drinking problems. My father was, I remember him just drinking all of the time. Like lots of them. They've got no problem with alcohol. You can have Jesus' first miracle. I remember
Mm.
this. One of the guys used to go, Jesus' first miracle, water into wine, you know, but you're not supposed to get drunk, but they do.
Mm.
All of my peers, we used to go out and get slashed. So what happens is that, but then they go to the Kingdom Hall and all pretend to be beautiful. Isn't that right?
Mm.
Yes, God is love. Isn't it wonderful what Jehovah does for us? Yes. Isn't it wonderful? Should we go out and preach to other people? And then underneath the whitewashed graves, underneath the rotten, they know the rotten. And that's why, if you look at the stats, Jehovah's Witnesses tend to have higher levels of depression. The more likely to be on antipsychotic pills, antidepressant pills. They have problems with alcohol. Why? Because they're extremely unhappy, because they're living this cognitive dissonance, like much more than any one of us would be. It's
I
dreadful.
mean, I remember, I remember when they used to come round, like in the council estate, and they'd knock on the door. And I mean, honestly, I was scared of them. Like I was actually scared because it was just I could feel, I think, some of them, the embarrassment because, yeah, and they're always wearing shirts, right? White shirts, or is that the Mormons?
You've got
What
to,
kind
well,
to
no,
wear?
the Mormons wear the white shirt, black
Oh,
trousers. And if you
okay.
check out the Mormons, right? There's loads of Mormons that come to Spain. Check them out. They've always got the filthiest shoes ever. And this is, I don't know what it is. So they've got the shirt, the tie, the black trousers. And I look at the shoes and they're minging. I don't know. They obviously haven't got a shoe rule, but it's, let's see, put in the comments if you've noticed. Mormon men have really dirty shoes. I don't know what that's about, but just something I've noticed. How bizarre. But the witnesses, yeah,
Right.
suit, shirt and tie. You had to wear the full thing. You had to have your briefcase under your arm. But what puts people off mostly is they are too smiley and they're too
Mm,
happy and they're too nice. And that they happen to fake it
yeah.
because underneath that's not what they feel.
Well, they're not real. It's like they're not
No.
real. You get that sense, the energy is something else altogether. And I just use well, no thanks, no thanks. There was just an energy about everything. And yeah, oh my God, it's crazy. And the thing is, how were all these different cults, as is what you call them, all these different groups of society that have been, I mean, even with like, say, like the drag queens and everything. Now, look, Blackpool, we had funny girls. I used to go and I used to go and hang out with them after. It's fine, but not when they're coming into the schools and stuff, right? And then the thing is, you realize that that whole thing was actually created for this time. Everything's been created for now, for the harvesting of the souls and everything, right? And which way you're going to go. Um,
Sure. Yeah.
and so they've gone for so many different groups of people, right? And it's the programming. And so, I don't think even we need to bother talking so much about the stories and experiences because we can all imagine. What would you say were the most powerful things you ever did or learned or aha moments that, because I'm sure you broke out in stages, it seems like peeling of the layers and then you think you're there and then you realize, oh no, there's another whole layer of a more subtle, which I'm struggling with my own from what happened with my whatever happened to me. I don't even know.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean it's very important, isn't it, for people to
Uh,
know how
I
to.
recall looking at, there's been such a lot of work done on how to identify a cult, the bullet points. So I remember looking at that and thinking, Jesus, that's every single thing that the witnesses do is this part of the cult, like, for example, um, if you love bombing, when you join, you get love bombed. Welcome. Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so pleased you're here with us and with Jehovah and all of that. Yeah. Love bombing. So you're made to feel like $1 million. And it's once you've made that step in, that's when the cult says, oh, by the way, we just got to tell you about a few rules that you've got to follow, or you can't be with us. And then the shunning as well, which is probably the most powerful thing, because what happened was that when I was thrown out, so my father is a Jehovah's Witness, my brother's a Jehovah's Witness, and I was instantly shunned by them. So in 40 years, I can count on two hands the amount of interaction I've had with my father and my brother. Okay, they're not allowed to talk to me. So that had that was part of my down and also my up. I had to work through that, the disappointment of, it's like you say to yourself, I'm a good person. I know I'm a good person. I'm a better person now than I was when I was Jehovah's Witness, because I wasn't living true. And so how dare they shun me when I know what they are? They're shunning me as if I'm a bad person. I don't know. Yeah. So that was kind of powerful for me. But seeing the what a cult does, one thing that and I don't know if you heard the stories of, people who were prisoners of war and they wanted to break them down. And so one of the systems that they use is that they give you information. Right? It goes against your beliefs or whatever. They just give you some information and then they ask you questions and you've got to answer about what's in that information. And even though you say, I don't believe it, yeah, but just tell us what's there. Just read it out. That process of actually just voicing, of giving in and reading it out, breaks down a layer of your kind of who you are. And it allows the programming in. Well, the witnesses do that all the time. And I saw that and I thought, we used to do that. There were the Sunday meetings, you would have a paragraph and there'd be a question at the bottom. And it would be something like, the paragraph says, Jehovah is the all-powerful God, and he is the only one who can make decisions on your life. And at the bottom, it would say, who is the most powerful God and what decisions can he make? And so you put your hand up and you would say, Jehovah God is the most powerful God, and he's the one who has, and they'll go, well done. That's just classic cult program. And I'm sure they still do it to this day. But what they've done is they've even, it's dumbed down. It's not high intellect stuff. It's like, who is God? God is Jehovah. God is Jehovah. What have we done? Yeah. And it's that repetition that they use. So that was a big waker up for me, was seeing what cults do and being able to relate that to the witnesses. And also I read a book called Crisis of Conscience. And it was by somebody who was one of the top leaders in the witnesses. And he left because he couldn't be a hypocrite anymore. And he wrote this book. It was like, oh my goodness, the things and the people that they have allowed to die. People, we know the blood issue that they have. That you're not allowed to take blood as a Jehovah's.
Oh, you're not allowed to have blood. Yeah. All right. Right. Okay. That's Jehovah's.
So people would die, and they would have celebration parties for people who said no. They would celebrate the fact that they died for the faith. I think we've heard that before, have we not? Very similar to putting something, an explosive thing under your garment and you're going to die for your faith. Okay. So this guy was saying, yeah, they put that rule in this country, but in that one they didn't bother. And you weren't allowed to join the army. And what happened, people were refusing, being a conscientious objector. And so they didn't join. In the US, for example, in the UK, you weren't allowed to, but in other countries, they allowed it. They didn't put the rule in. And so these people were going to prison. And this guy was saying, this is not following God's word. This is just a political type of thing. And that's what it is, really. The witnesses are just an arm of the devil, I suppose, the political arm of the devil. And it's kind of, the more, obviously, I just need to talk to ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. They put you right. Ex-Jehovah's Witnesses are experts on what's wrong about the Jehovah's Witness organization. So kind of working with people, helping people through therapy. I also kind of, heard such a lot. Poor things.
Oh, and how many, have you got any sort of particular stories that you fondly remember of people? You must have got quite close to a couple of people in helping them, assisting them.
I don't work. I used to work only with ex-Jehovah's Witnesses because that was my channel and I would promote it. But now, every now and again, somebody will come who's an ex-Jehovah's Witness and I work.
All
But
right.
it's great work because most of them say this. They say, "Oh, I've been to 2 therapists. No good. They don't understand. They don't understand what it is. So, and unless you've been through it, you don't understand." So when they would say, and so my family, my Jehovah's Witness family, won't speak to me. I'm shunned. And the therapist would say, "No, but no, not really." I said, "But not, it can't be like that." And they're going, "You don't understand it." Whereas when somebody says to me in therapy, "My family shuns me," I know exactly what that means. But not just knowing what it means, knowing how it feels inside, So, I mean, I'm still working with, still now, I'm working with people who I've been working with for years, Jehovah's Witnesses who are going through processes, who are poor things, are going through shunning processes, leaving, knowing that when they leave, they're going to lose half of the family or all of it in some cases.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, but strong people, the people who leave are strong. The people who aren't so strong stay.
But it's hard, I think, not even just to do with the Jehovah's Witnesses, but even anyone who's had anyone who needs a therapist, right? For things that have happened. Sorry, there's a lot of tractors going by.
Can't hear anything.
Oh, can you not?
No.
Oh, the muck's spreading because the sun's out. And but it's so hard to find good therapists.
Hmm.
I've met I mean, I did most of my therapy part of my life in Malaysia, so I thought I was lucky. But it turns out I had this one woman for a couple of years who she just wants you to just keep reliving and talking about everything. And I just realized after 2 years, every time, and she was very glamorous, American sounding, Malaysian, whatever. I thought she was so lovely, very expensive, but obviously, I was married and whatever. Um, and it wasn't doing anything. And then one day I just met someone that had spent a long, like 11 years with her. And she said that one day she just got fed up and left. But the thing is, what you were saying about how when they are describing stuff and you can feel it, this is the thing, it's hard I don't see how anyone can really be a true therapist if they are not able to hold the space, right? Either through their own experience or someone very close to them who's gone through. So I don't know. I mean, maybe you can. I suppose there are souls that have the ability to be empaths without experiencing it. But there's just so many, like you said, the details, like they're not understanding how serious it is. Oh, which reminds me, kind of similar. I watched Jacob's Ladder yesterday.
Oh, did you really?
I've never seen it before. It was not at all what I thought it was about. But the thing is, like, I'm not obsessed, but I often think about the wars and what the real reasons for the wars were, not just to destroy all the old buildings and get rid of people and kill people, but to experiment on them. I think there were hybrids and creatures that would come and feed on them and stuff, right? So when these people were coming back shell-shocked from these places, and everybody thought, oh yeah, he's shell-shocked, shell-shocked, shell-shocked. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like that. And when you feel unheard, unseen, misunderstood, and you're the only person that's going through it, and I'm sure you thought you were a tiny, little, or I don't know, did you think you were part of something small, or did you think that when you were younger, the whole world were Jehovah's Witnesses? I don't know. But yeah, so it
No,
just
I
reminds.
knew. I knew it was a small group.
Right. So, and it's that feeling of, being different from everybody else and being an outcast and other people not understanding you. Like they couldn't understand, my friends couldn't understand how hurtful the relationship with my dad or the lack of it. And then kids can be cruel, can't they? They will always tease you about that thing. Like I'm sure you had loads of people teasing you as well who knew.
Sure.
But that would also be a reason why you were to go into the drinking and the alcohol and whatever else, the partying and everything, and why everybody was naughty, because that's just the way to rebel. That it's
Oh, of course. Yeah.
it's your soul. But yeah, Jacob's Ladder was pretty crazy. So therapists, And so I think it's probably a blessing that you do what you do. And, you know,
What I found, Kerry, is this, that when I help somebody, I'm helping myself, and I know fine well I'm helping myself. And it's the service to others. When you serve others, you're serving yourself. You can't help but to help yourself. And the universe pays you back. I believe that the more people you help, the more the universe will help you. I just believe that it's a nice little, it's a very easy loop that we get into. You know, whereas if you become self-serving, well, that doesn't go so well. And even if you have, you know, people will say, how is it that the baddies have loads of money? You say to them, yeah, but do you think they're happy? Check on the inside. Do you think they're living in hell? You know, they're living in hell. Going back to your thing about therapists, I haven't seen enough therapists to know that, you know, what the criteria ought to be a good therapist. But what I do know is that therapists who have gone through their process, who've gone through their hero's journey, who've had to fight the dragons, tend to be much better at helping you through the same process. And I also, my therapy is alternative. I do alternative therapy. I'm not a talky therapist. I do some talking with people when they need to talk, because people need to talk as well. But my therapy tends to be processes to help them to do the cleansing. Because what I've discovered is I've had people who've come to me after 5 years of therapy with the same therapist. I don't know, have I told you this? Maybe I have. It rings a bell. And I say to them,
no,
you must be better now then, are you? 5 years? And they go, no, I feel worse. I think, how? But what I discover is, as I talk to them, they are experts on their problem. They've talked about the problem so much, they know it inside out. Inside out. Is it any better? No, they've still got the same problem. They're very difficult to work with. Why are they difficult to work with? Because the therapist has concreted the problem through repetition, exactly like just like the witnesses do, just like any cult. They've made that problem. It's so solid that, man, it's so hard to get shut up.
embedded.
Yeah. So you know, if I'm working with somebody, I need to know what the problem is. But there are lots of therapists that are content free. Don't tell me anything. I just want to know how you're feeling. Tell me nothing. And that's also good in its time. But I like to have some background so I can then, you know, where have you been? Where are you now? Where do you want to go? Once you know those three things, and then you've got all the tools you need to be able to help them.
Spot on. It is. It's so true. Where are you, and where do you want to be, or what do you want? What do you want? And you know, it's like, oh, I don't know. What do you not want then? Work out what you don't want, and we'll work out what's left.
Sure.
But yeah, no, they do. The talking definitely just keeps cementing it, right? Especially if you're letting people just come in and talk about the same thing over and over and over without saying, right, okay, look, can you see there's a pattern and that we maybe need to pattern interrupt a little bit? So now we're going to start doing some work and deal with it, right? And because nobody wants to deal with it. And the therapists then are having to deal with a heightened energy and lower frequencies as people start to tap into those kind of, you know, welled up emotions, whatever, buried emotions, excuse me. The therapist is then having to deal with that energy, and it's not easy because it gets into your solar plexus when you're holding space for people. It's not, it's, you know, it's difficult. You need a heart and you need strength to hold the space, you know.
Absolutely.
And not many people are prepared to do that. It's more, you know, oh, let's just go out, have a few drinks, it'll be all right. Have you been to go and take antidepressants, go to the doctor, you know, whatever. But you have to go through the gnarly stuff. What techniques, if you don't mind sharing, what kind of techniques, processes? You say alternative therapy. I'm super interested.
So alternative therapy in my book is anything that works. Okay, it's classed as alternative. Yeah.
Anything that's not pharmaceuticals.
Yes, exactly. So
Clinic.
principally, I was trained in NLP. I trained myself in NLP.
Right.
So neuro-linguistic programming, which is something that once you know it, if you know it well, it becomes incorporated into your language. It isn't, you know, I don't normally do formal NLP processes, although I sometimes do, but typically it's in your language. hypnosis as well. So I use a clinical hypnosis, which is a mixture of direct and indirect hypnosis. I use a process called havening, which is for trauma. It's beautiful process for any kind of trauma, any kind of, it's certainly childhood trauma, whatever. I use EFT, which I think you also use, tapping. Yeah.
Well, I learned it, but I don't do it as much as I should.
Sure. Yeah.
I do a
It's
different kind of explain, but yeah, go
fab.
on.
It's fab. I also use eye movement desensitization, which is
EMDR.
yeah.
I couldn't do it. It was too. See, we did family therapy with this guy in Malaysia. His name was John Ben. Talk about a clue of being a split personality schizophrenic. He literally was in front of my husband and I at the time were having therapy. Oh my God, he was so horrible to me. I had to leave the room and I never saw him again. He literally launched on me because I made a comment about he was saying that my ex-husband's autistic and that I should be more supportive of his needs. And I was saying, well, I'm really emotional and I need my emotional needs met. And he's like a robot. And he was like, but he's, you know, but he's a bit autistic and he's got these problems and you have to support him. And I was like, well, why do I? And he turned on me and I knew he was having issues with his wife, who was like Norwegian or something. He was Chinese Malaysian, tall Chinese guy. And he was a psychopath, completely attacked me. Anyway, that just came to my mind. But I used to do EMDR there. And my kids would, well, one of my daughters, I think, I don't even know what happened to her, but she was doing it, but she used to get very agitated, like, ooh, so did I. It used to make me very, what goes on with that though? I mean,
So what the principle of EMDR is this. What happens?
people be wondering what I'm doing with my eyes. I'm just
I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. So what happens is, you know how, right, when something happens to you and somebody say, well, so what happened? And people will tell the story. And if you ask them 10 years on and you say, so what happened? You'll find that they'll use exactly the same words, exactly the same words. They've learned a script. And so they just like, they tell this story. Well, what happens is when people are talking, they are using their eyes to access different parts of the brain. So when people look up, they're accessing the visual cortex. When they're in the middle, they're in the auditory. And when they look down, they're
oh
in
my
the
God,
emotional. Okay.
that's so interesting.
Yeah.
I'm
So
always looking around. Go on.
yeah. And the eyes are the windows to the soul. Why? Because I'll say to somebody, so what happened? And I'll just give you an example. I mean, sometimes it's more complex than this, but they'll go, well, all right. So I think, so visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Okay.
It's so funny. Let's sit there, no idea
So
what you're looking
what
at.
is they're seeing something, then they're saying something, or they're hearing something, depends on the side that they look, and then they're feeling something, okay? So I know that's kind of the pattern that they run. And every time I say, so what happened? They will do exactly the same movement, just as if they were speaking. The idea with EMDR is you get them to access the problem and then you force their eyes into different places. So where they would not go visual, then you're going to keep them in the auditory. And what happens is, if you imagine it's like you've got this one pathway, this neural pathway that's cut into your brain, and you get the stimulus and then you get the trauma. That's all you need. You just need the trigger, yeah? So what happens with EMDR is you start doing this, you start opening up new pathways in the brain. So when they get the stimulus, then they've got more options and they go, oh, actually. So one of the clues to whether you've helped somebody is at the end of whatever process, and it doesn't have to be EMDR, any process where you're giving them options. And then you say, so, when you think about that old, obviously it's language, when you think about that old problem and you're pushing it behind you, and they'll go, and the eyes are all over, they're looking for it. And most times they say, I don't know, I can't. And I say, it's okay if you can't find it. Yeah, and so they're looking around because they're trying to find the old pattern. Well, you've just helped them to erase that old pattern. So that's what EMDR is, but it's the same with havening, it's the same with tapping, it's the same with hypnosis, it's the same with regression in hypnosis. All of those things are rewiring the brain. That's what you want to do. You want to overwrite rewiring the brain.
What's havening? What's havening?
Havening is a touch therapy. So what happens is we access the trauma, whatever the negative feeling, and then either if you're with them, you would do this. If not, they're unknown, and they start to just rub their arms like this, okay? And they can change it and rub the face, okay? This, even though it looks as simple, is steeped in science. And what happens, you know, when children hurt themselves, little children, see them in the park, they'll fall over, they get up and they look for the mum. And then they see the mum and they go, "Ah!" But they don't start crying until they find the mum's gaze, because they want the mum. Yeah. Okay. So what happens is when you're doing this, you are firing off those, because when you run to your mum, what does she do? There. All okay. Everything's okay. Don't worry about it. So what this does is it absolutely wipes out that neural pathway, just clears it off. And so when you do it, what happens is often afterwards, you can't find the trauma again. It's gone. Okay.
Wow.
Trauma.
This is
trauma. Sorry, go on. And then
no. Go on, continue. I'll come up.
All I was going to add to it was the reason that children are waiting to catch the mum's gaze before they cry, right? That thing that we do, which is, hang on a minute, I'm really upset. I need to find my mum. Or it's nearly always a mum. What happens? Trauma is created when trauma occurs and the child perceives that they've got no escape, that they are stuck, that they might die. Okay. And so what happens is this, because trauma happens to all of us, trauma can happen. And as long as you feel that you can escape it, as long as you have somewhere to go, a safe haven, this is why it's called havening. If you've got a safe haven, which is your mum, she's going to stroke your arm, she's going to put a Band-Aid on, that trauma's gone. It's when you have trauma and there's nowhere to go, it gets stuck and it's locked in. That's the trauma. That's why two people can see the same thing. One person's traumatized, one person's not. How can that happen? Because this person has some resources that they know, this is, I'm not trapped. This is, and I can go and get rid of this trauma or whatever. And somebody thinks, Jesus, I could die.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Amazing. That's so, I like this, such an amazing conversation. And I've done, obviously not just done a lot of work, but I've experienced all this stuff, right? I've experienced really awful kind of neglect and abandonment, but mainly because my mother was abandoned and neglected and didn't have it within her. So they pass it down. This is what they talk about, the transgenerational and how it's passed down, because, you had her parents were victims of the First World War, fracturing the collective psyche. And then those parents that went on to have children, plus where did they all just come from anyway? They're on the clone trains, it's just so bizarre, that whole thing.
Yeah.
And then you've got, those children are then not loved by their parents, and then they've had us. And then suddenly now we're in the age of, anyone who's got kids that are like 35, maybe. I think 40 might be a bit too old, but they've been quite well looked after, seemingly. I can't explain. It's all so complicated. Like I have there's such an onus on me to be understanding of my children, and they talk about anxiety and they talk about trauma, and the trauma they've had is witnessing me acting out my trauma. And yet so we're kind of caught in the middle at this age, where our children and the younger ones are all very, very easily traumatized, right? And then our parents were not at all connected, and so there's no one. We're kind of lost out in the middle. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? It's just really weird.
what I've seen, because I've worked with lots of different ages, what I've seen is that, so the people from my parents were traumatized as children, and they passed that on. Their parents were traumatized, and they passed that on. And there's a interesting scripture in the Bible that talks about the sins of the fathers will be passed on to the children. Okay. That's what that's about. It's passing on this trauma. Our generation, what I've seen, has been the generation that I've said this far and no further. This stops here. It stops with me, and I'm not going to pass this on to my children. And so that, and I believe that it's all part of this process that we're in, because this other generation, they haven't got time to be traumatized and then spend their life getting over the trauma. They haven't got time for that. They've got other things to do. So I think it was our job to come down and stop that process here. And that's what very rarely do I hear of people passing on the trauma. You know, it's always like, and I'll make sure that I never do that with my children. You know, whereas before, it was, as you were saying, it was like this automatic. That's what that was done to me, and that's what I do to my kids.
Yeah.
You know, and we stopped.
Yeah.
So our generation was vitally important in this process to stop that.
Yeah, because I think what we did, those who are quite badly affected, was we might exhibit behaviors that were damaging, possibly, but we would always then apologize, explain, hug, make up for it, and, try to just say, look, I'm sorry this happened to me. I'm trying my best to deal with it, but where I was in Malaysia, I'd say not Malaysia, everywhere, it was just, like I said, impossible to get help.
Sure.
With anyone that was really not in it for the money or qualified or experienced, so yeah, it's I'm actually feeling emotional. I feel emotional just even having the conversation.
Sure.
So I'm also thinking, oh, maybe I should do EMDR with you, because I know there's a bit of stuff left. I know there's still a block, the worthlessness, the waiting for somebody to come and, yeah, what a load of rubbish or whatever. I don't know,
Sure, yeah.
knock you down. And it's
I'd be very happy to help. The thing, I don't believe that it's like having a car. Imagine you buy a brand new car, or you get your car serviced, and you think, that's it, I never need to service my car. That's not how it works. This is a vehicle. We need constant cleansing and servicing, and the filters changed and everything like that. Literally, the filters changed.
yeah.
So that we never arrive at beautiful mental health. We have to keep maintaining it, so even if you've had work done and you felt much better, you still need to keep it going. I always people used to be embarrassed about having therapy, less so now, because the Americans did a wonderful thing with everyone has a therapist now. Is like, God bless you. What's your
Oh,
therapist?
it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the name of
If you
your
have
therapist?
one, then you're normal.
Sure.
Yeah.
But
You see him too. Me too.
yeah,
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. I mean, that's why I was called liberally especially during the awful period a few years ago. I thought, right, well, we're going to have a lot of traumatized people, and I've got these skills, and I'm going to share them. And so I started to do courses and stuff like that, which went really well. And so now I have got access to a lot of people who have the same skills, who can go off and help. It's all about trauma. Everything's about trauma, everything's about trauma. It's about,
Well, I mean, but it's energy, frequency, and vibration with a story attached, right? So, and what's the stories in a nutshell usually comes down to abandonment or attack, assault, isn't it? Really, isn't it rejection or assault? I mean, or
right. Well, if you want to put it into very, very simplistic terms, and this is very simplistic, but I find it to be the case with children. So children believe their parents to be perfect. Right? You said something a while back, and I wanted to comment on it, but there wasn't the opportunity. when big people tell little people what they are, what they think, what they're like, the kind of person that they are, little people believe them because who are they to question an adult? These are big people. These are perfect, right? So again, we project perfection onto our parents. From our parents, all that we need for us to get through life and not be screwed up. If we get this, we will have a beautiful life. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen very often. We want love from our mother, unconditional love, and we want unconditional approval from our father. That's what we want. When we get those two, we go flying through life and there's no stopping us. When we're missing one or missing both, which happens a lot, then we are fucked up, literally. Because when you don't get the love that you need, unfortunately, what happens is you've got this imbalance, and children blame themselves. They don't blame the parents. They don't say, huh, my mother was unable to give love. When we get older, yes.
Yeah.
But as children, they say, my mother doesn't love me. Therefore, that means, and it's always self-reflection, that means I am unlovable. Or that means that I'm going to have to work hard to get love. And so what happens, or any other, fill in the gap. So you'll get girls who don't get the love from the mother, will go off and try and find love. And they'll work very hard and they might become very easy because they want to try and get that love. It's the same with approval. The most important thing for a girl is the approval of the father. And the most important thing for a boy is the love of the mother. When they don't get it, then they go off looking for it, or they find way, or they believe they don't deserve it. And so everybody who comes into life as soon as somebody loves them, they reject them because they think I'm not, on this program is I am not good enough for love. I'm not
But
loved.
this is why they've attacked the family unit, it's like, it's all about, and it's all an attack on the family. It's all about just a way to, separate the parent. And they've done such a good job. I mean,
Boy, have
it's insane now the way that the kids view parents. I mean, my daughter went to an Australian therapist. It was all during the divorce. It was just such a drama, that whole thing. I didn't want to get divorced. I didn't want to leave the family, but I knew I had to. And I knew I had to take all the crap for it because I couldn't explain at the time. I didn't even know coronavirus was coming. But that was why I had to leave a year before. I didn't know. And so, afterwards, everybody was like, oh, good thing actually, Mom, that you did that. I was like, yeah, right. But the therapist told her, no, he told me when I went to see him after he'd seen her, I found this really cool Australian guy that was like a bit, new age, whatever. And I went in to see him and he was like, he said, I'm so sorry that you've had such a challenging time with your daughter. And it's my first one, the one they took away for 3 hours and brought her back with a bottle of milk and everything, when I didn't want her to have formula. And he said, the best way forward for you is to now try to see yourself as not being her mother. You're not her mother. You're not even a parent. You could maybe consider yourself a guardian because she doesn't see you as a mother at all. And I remember sitting totally taking it all in, thinking he was trying to help me, do me a favor, because I was constantly crying because she disappeared during the whole thing. It's a long story. We speak now, but the damage is done and the connection's not then. And look, I share my story because it's so common. And I just want to trigger people because they are going for the babies in the hospitals. Then they're going for now the kids go to preschool. It's not even 5 years old. It's 18 months and a year and 3 months old. Get them in. Yeah, we can start teaching them maths at 3 months. We can. It's just awful. But for him to say, she doesn't really consider, so, you need to now, don't think of her as your daughter. You're not her mother. You're just maybe a guardian. How awful is that? I mean, I need to get this guy. I can't call overseas because I've got a card that won't let me go out of phone. It's just crazy in my life. I want to call him up and go, hey, by the way, yeah, beep, beep, beep.
Yeah.
Like, who does that?
The
How awful.
job of a therapist, in my opinion, is always to leave people with hope. That's got to be, even if in the depths of your heart you think I don't know how this is going to resolve itself. You've got to help the person to believe that there's going to be resolution, because it's that, the belief leads to the end result. So no, that was
Well,
just
that's the thing, yeah.
awful thing.
Well, I mean, it seems like he's a WF type trained person or whatever. I don't even
Sure.
know, I mean,
Sure, yeah.
it's just wrong.
Mm,
And then, we've got all of the the SS
yeah.
here and in every country removing all this. I mean, it happened to my sister, and it's the trauma of having your child removed against all anything. There's nothing wrong. The parents are not doing it, but it's just, that kind of trauma is really hard to get over. My sister's not recovered from
True. I would
having three
imagine.
kids removed, two kids removed. She can't. She's gone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's literally every single facet of our reality. There is potential for trauma and suffering and pain.
Sure.
Everybody's just being attacked way,
I
you
agree.
know.
I agree. And our job, that's knowing that is our weapon and is our protection. Knowing that, that means that what we've got to do is we've got to get ourselves cleansed. We've got to clean out all of this old trauma and be as strong as we possibly can, because we need to be. We need to be strong now. Any chink in our armor can get at us. So we've got to make ourselves as strong as possible. And how we do that is through self-work, through that. So my recommendation to anybody is, if you think that you've got something that's unresolved, get the fucker resolved.
Yeah, because what happens is, for example, I was hearing a couple arguing recently, and it was going on and on and on. And I could feel the pain. And without hearing the words, I knew everything because I couldn't, it was all a bit muffled. I knew everything that was coming out of their mouths was from an earlier trauma
For
that they're
sure.
trapped in.
For
And
sure.
what we do is we project onto the people around us, right? Because we're always wanting to purge this, but we don't know what it is we're trying to purge, because we haven't acknowledged, or pinpointed where it's from. Because we're dealing with very sophisticated technology that's been used against us. And then the other person's going to fight back from their place of trauma. So it's like two people speaking two different languages, living in two completely separate timelines, who happen to be somehow in this 3D time now moment,
Yeah.
having an argument, thinking it's about, well, you went and looked at that man, you looked at him, and it starts a massive art, and it goes on for hours and hours and hours. And that's why we have to do the inner work, because all of that stops when you stop projecting, when you stop thinking that, your emotions are created by everything out there. No, your emotions are in here. They're already set or altered or whatever from a specific time or group of times or period, and you are constantly always reacting from that space. If you don't fix it, it's everywhere until you deal with it and acknowledge it. And like you just said, I mean, even just acknowledging, okay, I think I've got a problem, I need to look out for it, that can be 90%, and then depending on how bad the trauma is. But
Sure. Yeah.
yeah.
But there's a nice metaphor that I saw about what happens, and especially with couples, but it can be with any interaction with people. You see those signs where two people are sitting in a booth, like a restaurant table, and they're looking at one another. And so there's nothing on the table, but underneath the table, it's chocker with past hurts and upsets and everything. But on the table, you can't see it. But what happens is, all it takes, it's so full under the table, there might just be a biscuit on the table, and that is representative of everything underneath. And so they're arguing about the most, when couples will argue about the most ridiculous things, the meaningless things, it's got nothing to do with that. It's all about what's under the table. That's been
Yeah.
under the table, under the rug, I suppose,
Yeah. And
Mhm.
even they don't themselves know that it's all there.
No,
So
no,
how is
no.
the other person to
Yeah.
know? And it's like all of our relationships and families, they're not allowed to just flow. It's like everything's just surrounded by this kind of shadow realm of demonic energy, which is what it is. It's feeding on. They want all of this strife and discord and pain and hurt that nobody really knows where it's coming from, because that's what's being fed on, isn't it?
Yeah,
Gosh.
yeah. But the nice thing about where we are now, that I feel and see, is that we're getting a lot of help now in terms of energy. For those people that are switching on to the energy's there for them. The frequency's there. You know, that's why they're so desperately trying to keep the sun blocked, because we're being bombarded with good stuff now. And so I think this is the best time ever to put yourself right. It's going to be easy if you do it now. It's not like before. I mean, I notice meditation used to be this mega work, and now people can go into meditation very quickly, and they can go into very deep meditation very quickly, and so it's all there for us. All we've got to do is step into it, you know. And as much as we're living in a realm, you know, we chose to come here, we're living in a dark realm that's ruled by the devil and all of his little workers and everything. We're moving into the light, and so all that we need to do is just get ourselves tuned up. That's all. You know, we're a beautiful car, but we need tuning up. The more tuned up we are, the faster we're going to move, and the further we're going to move away from that shit. The further we're going to distance ourselves from that shit. They can't hold on to us. They can't hold on to us. Not when we become, when we're vibrating at a different level, we become untouchable. They can't even grab us.
Yeah, they can't see us. We become invisible.
The Celestine prophecy, we slip through the fingers. So that's all. Our job is to raise our vibration. That's it.
Yeah.
And what they do, well, that's their business. But our job, our first number one job, is to raise our vibration. How do we do that? 2 steps. First step, get rid of all of the baggage from before, because you can't drag that behind you. Get rid of the baggage, and then focus on your spiritual health. But the problem that we've got is a lot of people are trying to focus on the spiritual health and have still got baggage, and it just makes it awkward. It makes it difficult. Get rid of the baggage first.
Well, it'll just be, you'll be up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Well, you know, unless you deal with the baggage.
It's like trying to walk through treacle. You've got this big weight behind you that you've got tied, you know, all these suitcases, baggage or whatever, filled with crap. And it's really hard to go forward. Once you cut that cord, you're flying. You fly.
Yeah, but some people are just so terrified, aren't they, of what's going to be in that case that they've dragged out from under the bed. It's and also because they don't often have proper support that they trust. You know, like we said earlier, going to a therapist who's half-hearted and in it for the money, and you've got an hour and you're just getting into it and you're crying and you've got to walk out in front of everybody and you're a mess. And they don't care. They're like, oh, I'm so sorry. It's run out. It's like, that's so the wrong way to do it, isn't it? It's just so wrong.
Sure. My advice is, when you are choosing a therapist, ask them what techniques they use, right? If they haven't got any techniques, or if they just say, I use, what's that one, cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, right?
Oh, yeah.
CBT. And what's that other one where if you're scared of something, they just say, well, I want you to move a little bit closer to that, and then a little bit closer. That desensitization. They're not the therapist that you want. CBT is the weakest willy-nilly therapy you can get compared to other ones that are very fast. So once you know that, you do not open any baggage, do not open a case with anybody unless you know that they've got the technique to help you to clean that case out. Don't open stuff up until you know you can trust somebody that's going to help you to clean it.
Because there can also be, you know, quite serious repercussions, you know, kind of spiritually as well.
Well, we've put them in cases for a reason. Our unconscious mind has locked them away for a reason. What's interesting is this. What I've noticed is this. When the client is comfortable and trusts you, it's like the unconscious mind has been holding back this trauma, and they go, no, we're not even going to be able to remember it. You're not going to remember it. And then, but when the unconscious mind sees there's a possibility of fixing this, because it knows that this is doing you no good, this is eating you up, but it'll hold on to it. But when they see, it's like the floodgates open. They go, have the lot. It's happened to me so many times that the client, I'm going, holy cow, okay, I saw this out. And they're surprised by it as well. They don't know where it comes from, but tears and whatever. So find somebody that you trust, somebody that knows what they're doing, somebody that's recommended,
And somebody that cares,
somebody
you
that,
know.
and always a therapist that's awake. Do not go to sleeping therapists. They're nightmare. You nightmare.
Wow, I think how long have we been talking?
Uh, a good while, an hour and a half. I think that'll probably.
Oh, really? Gosh, we're going to be turning people like, oh no, 90 minutes. I'm not watching
I
that.
will have to cut it in two.
No, I'm joking. You know what? At this point, I'm always up for a good 2 to 3 hour one. Like David Wilcock, that's why I like him. He's
Holy
always a good
cow.
3 hours. Get my crochet out, have such a laugh at him because he's so vain. His ego's like
Oh my
fully, but
God.
it's
Oh my
it's an
God. He is.
innocent ego. I don't know,
Sure.
but he was complaining. He's only got $9,000 in his bank account, so because people give him a lot of donations when he does his lives now. It's a lot. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm so grateful because I've only got 9,000 in my bank account. And, you never know. And I'm thinking, I've got £3.67 in mine. But you know what? I've got cauliflower, eggs. I've got a bit of bread. I've got, I don't know, my roof's over my head. I don't need to
The
pay
main
bills,
thing. Yeah.
such. I've got a tank of petrol. So whenever the next bit comes from wherever, I don't know. I was thinking of asking my neighbours if they want me to get groceries and cook for them, not to charge them, but just so I can take some of the food to eat. You know what
What
I
a
mean?
good
It's like instead of
idea.
just because I cook quite good stuff, but it's like I'm on my own, aren't I, most? And I always cook massive because it's entrained in me to
Uh-huh.
cook for more people. I can't cook a meal for one. Anyway, that's just a ridiculous aside note on, but yeah, amazing times we're in. Amazing time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Kerry, thank you very much for the chat. We went from Jehovah's Witnesses to therapy.
Well, it's all connected, isn't it? So,
Absolutely, it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
your story is about a trauma and it's about how you got over it. But thank you for having weathered the storms and ended up in this very gracious position that you're in. Like you've got such lovely energy, and I should imagine that your therapists, your clients absolutely love you and are so grateful for you.
I love my clients. And but I'll
Yeah.
just before we finish, then the things I said about Jehovah's Witnesses, I get quite warmed up and heated. Okay, so if I've said anything that's offended anyone, I do beg your pardon. Okay, and also if you're a therapist and you just use CBT, that I apologize. I'm sure you do it very well. I do get very passionate about these
Oh
things.
no, uh, yeah, they need to just do CBD, not CBT, D. Yeah. We love a bit of CBD, we're just not into the CBT. And
So,
anyway, it's all great.
okay
Oh, thank
then.
you.
All right, so we'll talk again, yeah, in the future. Ooh,
Yeah.
fly.
I think maybe next time if we have another chat, which we probably will, I think it'd be really cool to look at the whole ley lines in England and King Arthur and Albion and stuff like that, maybe. Some of the things that people can do in their areas to go out and actually be therapists for planet Earth.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Let's do that.
All right.
Okay. All
Mwah.
right. Kerry,
See
speak to
you
you
soon.
later.
Take it easy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.